Yesterday, a Democratic National Committee panel took a resolution condemning AIPAC and promptly lit it on fire. Why pay attention to your voters when there's these lobbying groups with bottomless pockets acting on behalf, sometimes just of foreign nations? So before we get into the details, Cenk, this is like a trifecta. On one corner, you have AIPAC representing a different nation. On another corner, you have the Democratic establishment. And on the last corner, you have these Democratic voters, and they're all bumping heads. So before we get into the details, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so we're gonna prove to you here that this is indisputably corruption. This means Democratic leadership is definitely 100% corrupt. And then I'm gonna tell you something you could do about it. So Elliott's gonna give you the facts, and then we'll talk about those 2 issues. Go ahead, Elliott.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and just dive into some of what this resolution actually said that the DNC has already killed. RIP, we've barely had any time to mourn. So the resolution read in part, the use of massive outside spending to support or oppose candidates based on their positions regarding international conflicts or foreign governments raises concerns about undue influence over democratic debate and policymaking, potentially constraining elected officials' ability to represent the views of their constituents. So I would say that sounds fairly reasonable. I think if you live in a democratic republic and you vote for people to represent you, whose job is ostensibly to act in your own interests, and then someone comes along with a bunch of money and decides who they think should be elected based on their interests, then it's just kind of inherently undemocratic. Now, the resolution was submitted by Florida DNC member Allison Minnerly, which was a shock to me. I didn't know there were any Democrats still left in Florida, so Godspeed to Allison, and blink twice if you're in danger. But she submitted the resolution, and she included in it how AIPAC spent $14 million in last month's Illinois primary. The resolution was killed despite the fact that an overwhelming majority of Democrat voters do not look kindly on Israel, and by extension, AIPAC, probably as a result of, I don't know, constantly bombing Lebanon or helping us start an illegal war with Iran, or that whole, genocide thing. But even if the Democratic base isn't happy about it, AIPAC sure is. They said the DNC made clear today that all Democrats, including millions who are AIPAC members, have the right to participate fully in the democratic process, and we plan to do just that. So they're sticking to their guns, and one anonymous DNC member also told Politico that at least 2 presidential hopefuls were part of killing this resolution, which is in itself non-binding. So you can get out your Polymarket or your Kalshi or whatever and take bets on who you think it was. Now, this is juxtaposed with DNC member and critic of Israel, James Zogby, who said the party needs to wake up to these changing views about Israel of their Democratic base. And so how are these voters exactly changing their minds? Well, it's not exactly subtle. 8 in 10 Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents currently have an unfavorable view of Israel, up from 69% last year and 53% in 2022. Democrats under 50 are slightly more likely than older Democrats to say they have a very unfavorable view of Israel. That's 47% versus 39%. I would have expected that to be a slightly smaller margin. Now, 60% of Americans in general now hold an unfavorable view of Israel, which is a dramatic increase since 2022. I do wonder what happens, but fear not, folks, because if there is one Democrat politician who has his finger on the pulse of America, likely because it might be the only pulse he can feel, it's this guy.
But I think more Democrats should listen to me and say, be on the right side of history and holding Iran accountable. And if you have to pick a side, pick our side, pick civilization, pick Israel. There was just a poll, I think it was today, Pew pointed out 80% of Democrats view Israel as negative. Like that's insane. That's our special ally. That's the only place in the region that has the kind of values and the kinds of way that we live and what we want here as a Democrat. How is that possible that 8 out of 10 view Israel in a negative thing as Democrats? And I know it's even more and more unpopular about standing and agreeing about epic fury, but I will be the only Democrat Democrat, in my caucus that's proud to stand with Israel. And I also think epic fury was necessary.
Yeah, so there you have it. There's a lot to unpack there. Why would voters be upset with Israel when they're our, quote, special ally? It reminds me of that meme of Fred Armisen when he's like, I'm just a little baby, I'm just a little special ally. You can't actually get mad at me. And I do think, however, Fetterman is right about one thing, which is that the US and Israel do share a fair amount of their values. So, Cenk, what do you make of all of this? Do you get frustrated? Does it not surprise you?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't know that they do share values. Like, I hope America's anti-genocide, Israel's pro-genocide. I hope America's in favor of democracy. Israel hates democracy and has denied 5.5 million Palestinians democracy, self-determination, and freedom for 58 years. Americans were very clear that we didn't want more war. Israel wants endless wars. But Fetterman just can't figure it out. Why would they be against his beloved Israel? And I love that he's like, well, I already threw out the talking point of special ally. Why are you guys still objecting? Because your dumbass propaganda isn't working. Okay, that's why. So now I told you this is definitely corruption. Well, how can I prove that? Well, if 80% of your voters have a negative view of Israel, then you say, hey, no one should criticize Israel, or we can't even condemn the dark money going in to help Israel start these wars and fund this genocide. Well, then you're obviously going against your voters. I mean, with it in a democracy, that makes no sense at all. What is the only reason why you would go against the overwhelming majority of your voters? Because your donors told you to. And they gave you millions of dollars to defy your voters. That is the definition of corruption. So the Democratic Party works for their donors who pay them. Now, by the way, guys, I've been saying this for 20 years. And a lot of you think like that's the most obvious thing in the world. But the reason why I keep repeating it is because every national media reporter goes, no, that's not true. The politicians do not work for their donors. That's an outrageous conspiracy theory. And the idea that Israel might control the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is outrageous. Well, what just happened? Look at what just happened. They controlled the Democratic Party. Now, if you think they got a negative view on Israel, wait till you get their view on AIPAC, which is a deeply right-wing organization, and then wait till you get a load of Democratic voters' views on dark money. My guess is that is about 98% of Democratic voters who are against dark money, and the other 2% are the ones that give the dark money. So when you're defying 98% of your own voters, 80% at a bare minimum, there's only one reason you would do that, because you were bribed to do that. That is super obvious to anyone who's not brain dead or a mainstream media reporter. It's pretty much the same thing, right? Yeah, go ahead, Elliot.
Yeah, it is pretty obvious. I do feel like confusion for Fetterman just at this point should be a pretty comfortable feeling for the guy. I don't know what he hasn't been confused about. I don't know how feigned it is. Like, I don't know if he's getting out there. I just don't know. It's like this sort of like innocent demeanor he tries to put on, but it's like, why are you ignoring the elephant in the room of all of the things that Israel has done just in recent history and pretending as though everyone should just shut up about it? I do believe him when he says, though, that he's going to stand by him. I mean, he seems to have definitely drawn the line in the sand, to say the least.
Oh yeah, for sure. And now there's rumors that he's going to flip over to Republican in the next election, and that makes sense. I mean, he'll get routed in a Democratic primary. But now what can you do about it, right? I mean, this is basically the Democratic Party giving a middle finger to its voters, going, we don't give a damn what you think at all. We don't care if 8 out of 10 of you, 9 out of 10 of you, 10 out of 10 of you, we don't care. We're corrupt, we work for rich people, we work for AIPAC, shut up, right? So, okay, but then what do we do? Well, number one, eventually in 2028, do not listen to Democratic leaders. They're the ones betraying you. They're the ones who screw you every single time. They're the ones willing to lose elections. The DNC also buried their autopsy of the 2024 election when they found out it was Kamala Harris's support for Israel that cost us the election. And they would rather lose again and again and again and again so they can keep taking bribes from AIPAC. Because guys, if you think like, well, what's the point of the bribes if they just lose the elections anyway? Because their careers continue unabated and all the consultants and all the politicians stuff the money into their pockets. They don't care about you. They've never cared about you. So for God's sake, pick an honest Democrat. You could find one. He's all over television. He seems like he's the only Democrat right now. I'm talking about Ro Khanna, but look, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe a second Democrat emerges that is not completely bought. Wouldn't that be amazing if there were two honest Democrats in the country? Of course, there's Bernie Sanders and a couple other good guys like Jamie Raskin and stuff, but those guys aren't going to run for president. So, but what can you do today? Well, at 8 o'clock Eastern today on The Revolution, that is a show that I do on the TYT network, following the Young Turks every day, Monday through Friday. At 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to take action together, me and the audience together, and we're going to ask every presidential contender in the Democratic Party, or almost all of them, hey, was it you? Because Politico reports there was 2 presidential candidate contenders who called in and said, don't you dare. You must follow AIPAC, okay? I'm gonna take money from AIPAC and I'm gonna use it to defeat honest Democrats. So you could vote that down, you understand me? So who was it? Now look, they're not likely to confess, but the people who didn't do it will say it wasn't me. And then for the folks who didn't say it wasn't me, it'll start to get weird. So let's do some accountability here and figure out which Democratic presidential candidate contenders betrayed 8 out of 10 Democrats.
Amen. I like that. And or you make a bet on Polymarket. Do whatever you want to do there. You know, I mean, my bet is online gambling will destroy the fabric of this nation. But if I were a betting man, I have my contentions or my contenders for sure on who it's going to be.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know who it is. I know some people are speculating, but there's so many people who take money from AIPAC. Like honestly, almost all the contenders outside of AOC and Ro Khanna and Van Hollen take money from AIPAC, so it could be any of them.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.